And we talked about fear last week. And the Bible says that God did not give us a spirit of fear, right? First of all, it says it doesn't come from God. Second, it's a spirit. And thirdly, it's a choice. You have a choice to fear or not to fear. Rather than fear, we have power, love, and a sound mind. So we have nothing to fear. God did not create that in us. We are more than conquerors, fearfully and wonderfully made. Is that right? There's no reason for any of us to fear. God made us perfect in every way. The only reason why we fear is that we find somehow the iniquity within us. We believe that something in us is undeserving of God's best. And we fear that we're undeserving and cannot live up to what God would have us to be. So today, we're going into our second emotion I call deadly emotions because they tend to control us. We're going to talk about anger today. Anger. Anger does nothing good for us. It does not serve us. I've not done my best when I've been angry. And when you're angry, you have to be careful not to give your anger a voice because anger wants to speak. And the things that anger wants to say are not usually good things. Ephesians chapter number 4. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. Let's go back to the first part of that verse. It says, be angry. You know, we're going to talk a little bit later in Scripture where it says, be slow to anger and do not be angry. But here the Scripture says, be angry. Why would it tell us to be angry? Because it's our nature. Cain got angry. As a result of his anger, he kills his brother Abel. And from that point on, we inherit all of the sins that are result of the original sin of Adam and Eve. And Satan will use every emotion to try and trip us up. Be careful of our emotions. Don't jump too high when you win and don't sink too low when you lose. Emotions are one way that it carries us into another dimension. When you're too happy and you're too exalted, be careful. When you're too sad and things happen in your life, be careful what you say and don't make too many decisions in those emotional states. People have ended relationships or business decisions or made poor choices because of anger. They've allowed anger to steer them. It's taken them into the wrong directions. And then it says, do not give the devil a foothold, because the devil looks for a foothold and he uses our anger as an opportunity to wedge themselves in. Do not let the sun go down upon your wrath. That's a good one, isn't it? That means let's get this settled before the sun goes down. And sometimes the sun goes down at midnight. Sometimes the sun goes down 2 or 3 days later. But the point is you don't rest until this is resolved. Because so often we carry unresolved conflict. And if you were to really get down to it, your anger sometimes goes back many, many years ago. Not a result of what's happening now. It's something that's happened way back that's caused us to be angry. And the anger, if something triggers that anger, and suddenly it brings up all of that emotion that you have been not dealing with from way back. So we have to deal with it. So today I'm going to talk about how to identify anger. Defining it, what does God see about anger? The effects that anger can have upon you and your loved ones, upon your health. And then I'm going to talk about how we can deal with it. What's God's response when we're angry? Anger, as you know, never sleeps. It never sleeps. When you're sleeping, anger is still dealing with you. Some people, while they're sleeping, not aware that they're clenching. They're what's called TMJ, temporomandibular syndrome, because when we're sleeping, sometimes we're angry, we're tense. And that causes increased stress. Sometimes we go to bed angry, we wake up angry, hot-blooded, short-fused, quick-tempered. Pastor, I was just born this way. Doctor slapped me and I slapped him back. I don't take nothing from nobody. If you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. Anger is one letter short of danger. Did you notice that? One letter short of danger is anger. And anger turned outward is danger. And turned inward is pain. Which means if I don't deal with my anger, the anger is going to deal with me. So I'm either going to hurt somebody or I'm going to hurt myself. Oftentimes our anger results in us exploding and harming others because we're dealing with this unresolved issue that we're dealing with. I will end up hurting ourselves. Alcoholism, drugs, a lot of ways we try to cope with this unresolved conflict and anger. Things that we can't change. We can't let it go, but we can't change it. So we have no way of venting it somehow. So we try to medicate and we end up harming ourselves to try and resolve this feeling that we have as a result of being angry. If someone disagrees with us, we get angry. Someone takes our parking space, we get angry. I was shopping and there was a 50% off sale. There's a lot of angry people in there. You're getting 50%, what are you angry about? Just grabbing stuff, just move, just throwing it on the floor, like angry. You got a bargain here, but you're still angry. Some people are always just boiling. It doesn't take much to set them off. It's easy to start a mob. You know, a mob is just a lot of angry people. If you would talk to the people in the mob, half of them don't even know what they're angry about. They just found the opportunity to vent anger. Oh, mob, oh, I'll be a part of the mob. But they just want to be angry. But anger does nothing good for us. Psalm 37 and verse number 8, I'm going to give you a couple of scriptures about anger. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only causes what? Harm. And Satan uses wrath sometimes to just stir up a lot of dissension. Because once you get angry with someone, you tend to have a different attitude toward them. You speak to them differently. You become disrespectful. And even after you find out that it was a non-issue, you've got to deal with how you have treated someone. Sometimes pride kicks in, doesn't let us say, I'm sorry, or I was wrong. James 1 and verse 19. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to what? Hear. Be swift to what? Hear. To hear. Slow to what? Speak. That means be quick to listen first and slow to speak. It says God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth, so we can hear twice as much as when we speak. Be quick to hear. Listen. Because when we're angry, we don't listen, do we? When we're angry, we don't listen. We're just waiting for our turn to talk. Okay, be quiet so I can talk. Anger. Be slow to speak, slow to wrath. For wrath does not bring about or produce the righteousness of God. When you're angry, you're not leaning toward how to find God's way. When you're under wrath, you're not trying to find God's solution. You want it to go your way. Proverbs 19:11. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. It's hard to overlook when wrong has been done, isn't it? It's hard to just look at something and turn the other cheek and just say, Father, forgive them. Our tendency is to want to make people feel the way that we feel. That hurt. So I've got to hurt you to show you how it feels. Sometimes in the midst of anger, you have options. God has a plan when it comes to anger. What did Jesus do? When he was on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And sometimes a person is angry because that's the way they've always dealt with things. Don't allow their anger to affect or infect you. There are options you have. You can take something hot, but you can counter it with something that's cool. Anger is like fighting fire with fire. It only intensifies the heat. And when people get angry, it tends to burn things out of control. Anger burns down relationships, burns up families, marriage. It ruins the good that could happen to you when you're angry. Anger is a consuming fire that burns everything in its path. And once you have ruined everything, You look back and you recognize that everything that was good was lost with what was bad. Because anger does not discern what is good or what is bad. Anger gets rid of everything in its path. So at some point we got to stop and realize we have options. Do not be angry. In Proverbs 15:11, just take a note of this one. Proverbs 15:11, it says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. A soft answer. Because anger is about differences and disagreements. What can we agree upon? If you're in a relationship and you're angry, do you still love me? I love you. Then let's start there. Because see, when you find common ground, that's a means of coming together. And if you can find one point of commonality, you can find another. It shows that you're starting to form like minds again. Because when you're angry and disagreeable, it tends to separate. And when you're separate, you don't look for anything that's common. You just want your way and their way. It's like you watch boxing matches. What they do is they come into the center of the ring and they fight. And then they go to separate corners and they develop strategy about how they can fight more. And that's what we tend to do if we're not careful. We don't try to resolve. We come together and we fight. And then we separate from each other. And we don't talk. We don't agree. We don't try to find common ground. We find strategies about how we can fight again. And we think that that's going to resolve a situation. It never resolves. It's resolved when you come together and the strategy is about fighting the situation, not fighting one another. Because if both of you are in a situation, let's spend our time not fighting each other. Let's fight the ocean. Let's fight the current. If we're in the same boat, let's fight the terrain. Let's not fight one another. There was an experiment done where there were rats in a cage. It done with several different types of animals, but rats were in a cage. They began to shock this cage, a steel cage. And all of the rats felt the same shock. They became frustrated because they couldn't control the environment in which they were in. And the shocks became more frequent and more intense. And the rats became angry. And the result of that anger was they began to attack one another. Sometimes when you're in a situation where you don't have control and you become frustrated, you will tend to fight the people around you the most. We hurt the ones closest to us. We don't fight situations. We don't try to come together and create strategy. We become angry with those around us and expect them to understand. And we go back and apologize. Well, you know how I felt. You know what I meant. I still love you. After you punch someone in the face, I still love you. Anger does not serve anyone. And once we recognize that, we have to stop and deal with it. And that means you may have to go back a ways to deal with some anger. Sometimes anger is not the current situation. Sometimes the anger is a situation that's way back. It's deep. It's the root. And when you're pulling up the root of something, sometimes as you pull up the root, it's severe. The effects can be severe. But in the end, it's worth it. A lot of work has to be done if you want to really deal with root issues. But it's worth it. It's worth it. There was a guy who was looking over the sides of a mountain. And as he was looking over and just enjoying the view of the city, he lost his footing and he slipped. As he fell, he grabbed onto a little branch, a root of a little branch there. He was hanging on, and he's screaming for help. And no one came. He says, help! And finally says, Lord, help me! And God shows up, and God says, I will help you. But the first thing you got to do is you got to let go of the root. The man looked around. He said, is there anybody else up there? That's what we do. We'll abandon God, right? Because we don't want to deal with the root. God makes us go to the root of the issue, but we don't want to deal with the root of that. We don't want to deal with the real problem. Because it might reveal something that we try to cover up. We try to just pretend that it didn't happen. But in order to become healthy, in order to heal, you got to deal with some root issues. You've got to go back and have forgiveness and understanding and compassion. I grew up around a lot of angry people when I was a child, a lot of angry people. And I found out later I had to have compassion for them because that's how they were treated. That's all they had to give. There's no excuse for it, but that's what they had. They were mistreated. They were abused. My father was illiterate until he died, had a second grade education. He was always mistreated as a human being, as a man, never given the respect and dignity of a man because he lacked education. And it frustrated him and made him angry. He had to deal with these lower paying jobs, never be able to realize his full potential. And he was a very smart man, but he could not utilize his gifts and talents and abilities. And that made him angry. And the result of that anger, the effects were felt with his family and his children. And I used to not like him because I never understood why he was always angry. But as I got older, I realized how difficult his life must have been. How he had to climb up the rough side of the mountain every day. A struggle every day of his life. It was difficult. And now we have so much. We have more than we've ever, the things that they dreamed of, we're living the dream right now. We're really living the dream. So why should we still be angry? We should be happy with all of the resources we have and all the blessings that God has given us. We're making more money now than it's ever been made in history. We're making now. We're living better. We're living longer. But we're living angry and frustrated. Not able to give our best. Types of anger. Number one, that's chronic anger. Chronic. That means prolonged over a long period. Chronic anger can impact your physical, mental, and emotional health. Chronic. When people used to come into my office in healthcare, the most difficult cases to resolve were chronic cases. Was something that they've been in pain all their lives. And all they've been trying to find was a little bit of relief. They never want to be cured. They learn how to deal with the pain. And the pain has limited them from a lot of things they cannot do. Because when you're in pain, there's a lot of things you can't do when you're in pain. So your life is limited if you have chronic situations. You're not aware that you're not able to give and be your best when you have a chronic problem in your life. The next type of anger is aggressive anger. Aggressive people are aware of their emotions but don't understand the root cause. They're often volatile and retaliatory. Road rage happens most Monday mornings between 7 and 9. Why is that, Pastor? Because people are going to a place that they'd rather not be. Around people that they don't even like. Doing something that they don't even want to do anymore. It's called the rat race, and I'm one of the rats, and I don't like being a rat, Pastor. But you got to do it again and again because you're caught up in a situation and you're frustrated, and that makes you angry. And you vent your anger at people on the road and people around you. And that's how we deal with it. Road rage happens on Monday mornings because people got to do it again. I got to get out, but I got to do the whole thing again. And there seems to be no way out. And it makes them angry. Most heart attacks happen at the same time, Monday morning. Most heart attacks, people physically are becoming ill because of situations that they cannot change. They cannot accept it, but they can't change it. Or they believe they can't change it. So when you're frustrated and you have to deal with something, it makes you angry over time. And that anger tends to affect you inwardly or outwardly. But there is an effect. The next is passive anger. And these are difficult because these are people that don't even realize that they're angry. They look happy on the outside, but deep down sometimes they're angry. Self-defeating behaviors such as skipping work or school, alienating friends and family. Passive anger are people that would tend to seem to be happy and things going well, and you find out that something happened and you can't believe that that person was the one that did it. They say they snapped. They snapped, which means they will always do something. It was passive, but something happened that caused it to surface, and suddenly they vented out and something happened. It's difficult to detect because passively angry people are covertly hostile, appear just as normal. They come to church, they're helpful, they're ushers, They sing in the praise band. They're pastors. They're in the hospitality. No. Look at there. But my point, but if you're not careful, if you don't check yourself well, you have to ask yourself, are you passively angry? There was a couple, and they seemed to have been happy, but the wife started to have these reactions every time her husband came home. Hives, all kind of things happening. As soon as he leaves, everything cleared up. Everything was fine. Really, it was fine. How is it? It's fine. How's everything? It's fine. You know those people. How are you? I'm great. Oh, that's the ones you got to worry about. The one that's always great. Nobody's great all the time, right? I'm wonderful. Okay, I'll be over here. And I have reactions like that too. I had a reaction, and you come out with these things. You don't know deep down there's something that you're venting. Something it's in you got to deal with. But it seems like everything is going well. Sometimes people will think everything is going well, then they start crying. They're just bursting out crying. Say, why are you crying? I don't know. Are you happy? Yes, I am. Is something wrong? No, it's great. Everything's wonderful. Passively got issues. But if we don't ever stop and try and discuss those and talk about those, they can consume us. People will walk out in their family. Don't know why, just walk out. One friend told me that his father came in. There was 5 of them, his brothers and sisters. He came in, he said, I want you to know that I love you guys. I really do. And they said, we love you too, Daddy. He said, no, I love you. He says, we love you. And he left, and he never came back. There's a problem there somewhere. You don't just walk out on your family, on a marriage, on your children. You resolve it. You stay there, you deal with it, you learn to deal with it. You get the help that you need. Don't allow anger to create responses and make decisions for you. Because when you get angry, you think of something that seems like it's a great thing, a great idea at the time. But you're allowing your anger to direct the course of your life. And when you do that, you find yourself further and further away from the good that God has for you. The prisons are full of a lot of angry people. They were angry. And people will make excuses for your anger when you're little. It's the terrible, what? The terrible twos. The tantrum 3s. The furious 4s. The fighting 5s. The shoot your parents 7s. Because some parents are afraid of their children, right? There's something on the news about that. They're angry. My children are trying to kill me. Really? We have the option and the obligation of raising up our children. The Bible says training them up in the way they should go. So rather than giving them everything that they want in life, thinking that that's going to make them happy, give them God's best. What is God's plan? When anger is present, your words should be few. When anger is present, your words should be few. Ephesians 4:29, don't give anger a voice. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification. That means building people up, that it may impart grace to the hearers. When you speak, people should be listening, waiting for the wisdom that's coming from you. You shouldn't speak a lot of things that are hostile and negative, pessimistic. Your view should be good, adding grace and edifying people, lifting them up, building people up. Use your gifts and talents for good. Anger is a danger signal, number 2. Sometimes we say things we can't take back. Wish we could take some things back that we said, right? But when you said them, as soon as you said them, you knew, I shouldn't have said that. And you know that it was going to come back to you at some point. But we said them what? Anyway. People will counsel you and say, I don't think you should do it that way. No, I've got to do it. I've got to go and tell them. I've got to give them a piece of my mind. We feel like that is the right thing to do, but that's not. Sometimes we got to be still and let God's voice be heard. We hear all the other voices, but what is God's voice telling you? Heed God's voice. Not that angry voice, not the voice of your friends, your co-workers, not the voice of people who just say, if it was me, here's what I'd do. Don't listen to them. That's the first one to tune out. In fact, you should have some people that you should call to find out what not to do. Don't tell them that voice. Say, what would you do? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. Okay, now I know what not to do. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature. It is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no one can tame what? The tongue. No one can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. When I was a child, I thought as a child. I what? Spoke as a child. I reasoned as a child. But when you became a man or woman, what did you do? Who put away the childish things? You did. No one tells you after a while, put away your stuff, do this, do that. You know what's right, do the right things. When you become mature, you start telling yourself that, Gene, you don't have to talk that way. You don't have to have that attitude anymore. You don't have to be angry. Control your emotions. When I became a man, when you become a man or woman, you put away childish things. That's when you want to grow up. No one has to tell you to grow up anymore. You start telling yourself to grow up. When you do stuff, you say, Gene, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. And you go back and you make it right before the sun goes down. That's maturity. You know when you said what you said. Don't cover it up. Don't make excuses for it. Realize that it was wrong and go back and make it right. Don't say, well, they should do it. Why should I be the one to apologize? Somebody's got to be the bigger person. Somebody's got to be the child of God, the example to the world. We can always say somebody else should do it. But when you become mature, you know that's me. No one should control you but God. Anger should not control you. Other people should not control you. You don't let other people pack your parachute. Right? You learn how to control your own destiny. Don't let someone else control you to the point and now they disrespect you or they disappoint you and you become angry. No, we had a part in this. We learn how to make better choices, better selections. Oftentimes our anger results out of choices that we have made. We become disappointed or discouraged with the choice that we've made. And we become angry with others. They are who they are. You can't change anybody else. They are who they are when they met you. And when you left them, they're still who they are. And you have to deal with you. The worst thing we can do is try to change somebody else. Learn how to accept people on their terms for who they are. And allow God to do the rest. It's God that changes hearts. It's God that takes away the bad and makes the good happen. God changed my spouse. God, first I want to change you. Change these co-workers, God. First I'm going to start with you. Every time you pray to God to change something else, God says, let me finish with you. Because God's still trying to finish the work that he started with us. We don't want God to finish that work. We're okay. I'm okay, God. Damn, these jokers over here. If you can fix that, I think we got something. We can deal with it.
Come on now.
Huh? Yeah. And then I got another list. After you finish with them, I got some others over here to deal with. And everywhere we go, we run into the same people, don't we? We go to the gym, the same worker now at the gym. Why are you here? I just left you at work. Come to church, same people at church as you have. God, why don't you just fix this stuff for me? God says, I'm trying. But it starts here. I found that when I've allowed God to finish and do the work in me, the people turn out to be okay. Suddenly when I allow God to do the work, suddenly I go, for helping me. These people are better now. I even like them, some of them. Wonderful, God, thank you. Because all we did was let God really get hold of us. Because we avoid God. We don't want to know God to them. No, God, no, take care of them. But when we let Him get hold of us, suddenly that's the change that we really need. The change we really need is this change right here with us. Number 3, anger can be used constructively. Sometimes you can get angry at an oppressive place. Some kind of situation you have to live under, and if it's not right, then somebody stands up and says no, and you can change it. But you've got to be upset enough, you've got to be frustrated enough with it and done with it, that you're going to change it for good. I'm talking about taking something negative and making it positive. Mark chapter number 3, verse number 1 and 2. And he, meaning Jesus, entered the synagogue again, and a man was there who had a withered hand. So they watched him. That means the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the church folks, the chief priests. They watched Jesus closely, whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. Verse number 5. And when he, meaning Jesus, looked around at them with anger, being grieved by the hardness of their hearts, he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. Jesus went into the temple once, and the money changers were in the temple. And what they did oftentimes was people would come into the temple to pray, and the money changers decided that since we already have all these people together, let's profit from this. Let's make it a profit center. So they found a way to exchange money and to sell items within the church. And Jesus got angry, and he took cords and he made a whip, and he came in and he drove them out of the temple, and he turned over their tables. My Father's house shall be a house of what? Prayer, not a den of iniquity. And he was angry, and he turned over those tables. Anger can be used for good. We've got to decide whose will is being served. Real quickly, and how we're going to deal with it. A couple of things. First, acknowledge. Acknowledge first that you have an issue with anger. It's not new to you. If you've got an anger issue, you know it. The first thing help to say, I've got a problem in a certain area. Whatever it is, acknowledge it. You're an angry person. I'm volatile, or you may, whatever it is that you may acknowledge it. The next thing is identify. Why are you angry? And that may take a lot of introspection, a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions. Sometimes you get into groups and you get into different management means where you can get counsel and help. But what you're looking for is the root. Sometimes we want to just resolve the current situation. The current situation only gives way to another situation. If you don't resolve the root of an issue, it just keeps coming up again and again. We talked about this last time, but we keep bringing this up again and again. Why? We've already gone over this because we're not getting down to the real root. But you've got to identify where the anger is. You got to identify the source of the issue. And again, it could go back to way before. It's not about the person that you're with right now. It's somebody that way before this person, way back. Once you've identified what the anger is, you've got to confront it. And when it comes up, and it's going to come up, that's your opportunity right there. You recognize welling up in you. You recognize when it's trying to come, and you got to stop. No. This is not anymore. It stops right now. It stops now. Once you recognize your control has always been within your grasp, your ability, but we've allowed it to control us because we never stop and just says no. We got to say no. I'm not getting angry this time. No. Sometimes rather than getting angry at a person, you just embrace them and love them. Just love them. Just love them through it all. No. God's been too good for me to surrender anymore and let Satan have another day of my life. It ends now. The anger ends now. The Bitterness ends now. The resentment ends now. Today, it stops right now. And we think, what would Jesus do? And then we say, yes. Father, forgive them. I know it hurt what they did. I know that it was premeditated. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Thank you, Father.